A call I can't explain. This is something that to this day really bothers me, and I just like to write it out to see if someone could shine some light on it. This was many years ago when I was 13 years old, on August 20th, 2004. It was the night before I was supposed to take a vacation to San Diego with my mom and my dad. Everyone was doing their own thing. My dad was ironing some clothes, my mom in the kitchen, and I was in my parents' room watching TV. Suddenly, a phone started ringing from my room, and I heard my mom say something in confusion before she walks into the room. I was inside holding an old Nokia cell phone. I didn't understand what was wrong until she told me this phone had just been ringing. You see, the thing about this phone ringing is that it shouldn't have. It couldn't. It was no longer having any service, and the only reason we still had it was because it was being used as a sort of family alarm for anything we needed, though it was used as my morning alarm for the most part. A few seconds later, the phone makes another noise. New message. My mom tried to listen to the voicemail, but of course she couldn't. No service. What makes this experience so unforgettable was that the next day, on August 24th, 2004, my dad died in a fatal car crash after coming home from work. He worked graveyard shift. I don't know if these things are related or not, but I've never been able to explain it. Maybe someone here has a theory, or maybe a scientific explanation. Anything would be nice, to be honest. Thank you for reading. Mimicking entity in a castle I stayed at. In August of 2016, I spent a night in a castle in the Upper Mittelrhein area of Rhineland-Pfalz, south of Koblenz, Germany. It was built sometime in the 1100s, although fortifications on the site date back to the 900s, and after its destruction by the French in the late 17th century, it was outfitted as a hotel. I was there with my parents, who were celebrating their anniversary. The castle was very high up on a rocky hill. No wonder it had survived so long. My parents had their own small cottage, which used to be one of the gatehouses, while my room was in one of the main buildings of the castle, 4 or 5 stories up. It took maybe 10 to 15 minutes to walk from the gatehouse to my room, as it required navigating the tight, steep outdoor passageways and the corridors required to fit the whole structure so high up on the hill. The style of doors used throughout the castle was quite old. They were heavy and wooden, and the keys were traditional skeleton keys, no manual locks, so if you wanted to lock your door after you got to your room, you had to stick the key in to do it. The keys were also chained to small knight figurines in order to prevent guests from losing them, so they made a fair bit of noise when you used them. I was having a very hard time getting to bed that night because a swarm of bugs had come into my room. The frame on the window was faulty, and the light had attracted them in earlier, so small bugs were covering everything. I left the lights off for hours, but that only helped so much. Come about 4 a.m., I just brushed my teeth and was in my underwear trying to get to bed. At that point, I heard some faint voices outside my door and listened intently. They were getting a bit louder and sounded like just my parents. I couldn't make out anything that they were saying, but they had a happy but quiet tone, like they were trying to be courteous because people were sleeping, but they were also having a good time. Faint short laughter and quiet remarks in an upbeat tone, that kind of thing. It was unmistakably the voices of my parents. I heard the jingling of a key and the sound of it bumping against my door, as if they were trying to come talk to me or something. As soon as I heard their voices, keep in mind, I couldn't make out anything that was said. I sort of rolled my eyes because they were pestering me right when I wanted to go to bed. I even started putting a shirt and shorts on, and though I'd go ahead and open the door for them, but it hit me that they didn't have a key to my door, Even they only had one key between them to their gatehouse. When I realized this, I took a step back from the door and decided to let them struggle, because none of this made sense. Within seconds, it went totally quiet. No jingling, no voices, not even footsteps. What I know for sure is that it wasn't my parents, and could not have been. They never drank. And it's not like they decided to go out and have fun or something at 4 a.m. either. We had driven to the castle from HN earlier, and everyone was so exhausted. They wouldn't have visited me that night even if they wanted to. The one thing I still think about is, what would have happened if I had opened the door to whatever was outside? If it was something paranormal, it took advantage of my tiredness, and also tricked me into doing it. My 3-year-old sister speaks to the dead. I had originally posted this on Reddit No Sleep, and it got taken down for not being horror, because horror doesn't equal paranormal. I'm 14 years old as of 2016. I'm an awkward kid and the black sheep of the family. We are all weird in our own ways, but being the oldest, I had a lot on me the others didn't. I was the only girl till my sister Fiona came along in 2013. Nothing that special. My look on the world at this point is odd though. I guess I don't believe in God or like Satan. I do believe in spirit realms and the possibility of speaking to the dead though. I kinda just think about it whenever it pops up. I don't think about it like I want to know more, it's whatever. That's not necessarily why I'm writing this, however. I mean, the title says all, but here's more background information. I was the only one of my mother's 4 kids to meet my great-great-grandfather. We'll call him Pop Bucky. I met him around the time I was 3, I suppose. I didn't get to see him much, because when he remarried, his new wife and stepdaughter, they were really mean to my mother and grandmother, and they wouldn't let us come and see him. Like my mother and grandmother lost touch with him, and family drama, it's all stupid. So of course, I never knew who he was. My mom would tell me stories about his poodles, and how they would drink his Coke and Crown. I had only seen pictures of him, and what I did see was maybe 2. I didn't think anything of it till my grandmother told me she had seen him. He was dying of cancer. I think he had it in his lungs and his brain. It's a horrible way to see a man go. I never really wanted to go into deep detail in my family life, but this would be considered normal. My mother studies witchy things like the underworld and spells and stuff like that. She does believe in other worldly spirits, and before I didn't believe much, but things my sister had started saying scared me. The really scary part of this all, after he died, of course, I didn't go to the funeral. I had school. But my mom did. And when she got home after all, that was just a mess of a funeral. My little sister started saying things. My little sister is only like 3 now, and she doesn't understand much like normal people things. I mean, she still uses a fork wrong and pisses in her pants. The one thing she does understand is the concept of death. I can't even grasp the concept of death, but a 3-year-old can. No one understood what she was saying for a while. She kept saying it more and more. At first, she spoke in a more babyish, mumbling speak, but after a while, her grammar and language patterns were similar to a slightly older kid, and this confused me and my mother. The only time she said things like, "He's here," "I saw him," "Mom, I think Pop-Pop's here." Also, she'd talk about that funny dead dog. I'm not sure if that's a correlation to Pop Bucky's poodle or she just heard it from somewhere else. Those are the only times she used proper speaking. Recently, her speech hasn't sounded like this, and she's a few months older. It's odd. Fiona never met him. She didn't even know who he was, and I'm pretty sure he never knew she was born either. Periodically, she has stopped, but then would start saying it again. Like, I remember all the conversations I've had with my mom and grandmother and such were like, we would talk about him and his new wife and his cancer and such. Fiona was never really there. She was never in the room, or even in the same house when we talked about it. I'm actually scared. My mom had caught on and kept trying to talk to her about it. Eventually, my mom had bought a Ouija board. It's been sitting in her closet since she has. I'm afraid she'll hurt us more than finding out answers, right? I love to talk to him again, but the fact my sister Fiona has been able to connect to a dead man she's never met sends chills down my spine. Now, most of this happened around August. It is October now, and I heard her mumbling on about he's here last night. I'm tempted to ask her more questions, but like ones where she could only answer them with the help of Pop Bucky. It's an experiment, but I'm still freaked out quite a bit. I need some sort of opinion. I don't know what to think anymore. What should I do if he's actually here? What if it's not really him and it's something else? Playing with her vulnerabilities. Experiencing activity in my apartment building, built in 1937. Just to keep things short, I've been living in this building since August of 2015. My boyfriend moved in around December. We're both very aware of the paranormal and our senses are being overloaded by something in our apartment. To start, I felt a presence whenever I first moved in, but asked the spirits to leave me alone, as it was my first time living by myself. It wasn't until my boyfriend moved in that we began noticing things. The first event that really caught our attention was what we call the cheesecake incident. We had brought a cheesecake from the store, taken a few slices to eat, and then placed it on the bottom shelf of the fridge before going to bed. There was a knife and a spoon left alongside the cake. We're college kids, don't judge. Which we'd both used to snag little bites. But when we woke up the next morning, there was an obvious clean-cut slice that had been taken out. Both my boyfriend and I swear that we both have no recollection of cutting a slice off, since we'd both had our fill. It thoroughly creeped us out, but we let it go. There have been some small things and feelings here and there that we've let go until tonight. First off, our laundry room is downstairs in the basement, 3 floors down. We had both gone downstairs together to move the laundry from the washer to the dryer. Upon arrival, I decided to sift through the unclaimed clothes that had been left behind. I noticed a white sports bra that I liked. I picked it up. My boyfriend, seeing me do this, acknowledged it as being Under Armour, and set it to the side to continue about my routine. I left the room empty-handed to head back upstairs. Whenever I walked back into my apartment, I spotted that same sports bra atop one of my small shelves. My boyfriend was behind me, the last in the door, and I had noticed the bra on the shelf before he reached the living room. Once we put 2 and 2 together, and realized I hadn't taken that sports bra upstairs, my boyfriend began feeling intense energy pushing into his back. He started tearing up, not crying, and had chills run across his body. I felt chills, but nothing else. We burned sage incense throughout our home, and have come to resolve amongst ourselves, but are now reaching out and asking what this could be or what it means. Anything helps. What should we do? Thank you. My father's haunted hospital bed. Warning, this is a long and sort of depressing story. There are a lot of important details I could not leave out. I have been a very skeptical person for a while. My mother is a nut for the paranormal, but like my dad, I became a pretty big skeptic. I'm open-minded, but I'm not convinced of ghosts and the like. I'd say there is several incidences in my life that have made me question my own beliefs of the paranormal. This time in my life in particular deeply affected me and still fills me with dread almost 2 years later. My father passed away in November 2013. My father was a pretty healthy person. He was in very good shape for his age because he was an automotive mechanic. He had never had any major illnesses up until this point. A couple weeks before his 50th birthday in August, he had felt a lump in his throat and started getting bigger and bigger. He went to the doctor, and they thought it was a goiter. Little did they know, it was an anaplastic cancer in his thyroid. A lot of testing went on for a week or two. They did a biopsy on him, but it turns out that was not a good idea. The cancer started spreading to his lungs, and it was too late to take out his thyroid, like they had planned before. He went through many surgeries over the course of a month. For the most part, it seemed like he would make it. They had allowed him to come home after a lot of chemotherapy, but he was very anxious in the hospital. They had put a hole in his trachea, right below the neck, in order for him to breathe better, but he was unable to talk after that. He had to use a dry erase board and a bell in order to communicate. The medical officials brought us all the equipment and the bed that he would need. We set it up right in the dining room. My grandparents had traveled to our state after they heard about his illness. They wanted to help out with everything, so the house was pretty filled up with a lot of stuff by early September. It was very hard to adjust to this. During the night, my father had a hard time sleeping. I could hear him ring his bell to get someone a lot, usually my grandmother or my mom. He would become very frightened often by something that would sit next to the hospital bed on a chair at night. He claimed it was a man who was tormenting him. Soon, he could not sleep without somebody else being in the room with him. It made everybody very uneasy. My mother was a nervous wreck. She never wanted to leave him alone for 1 second. We were worried that his medication was too much for him. It did not take long for other family members, including me, to start seeing apparitions at night, though. A lot of weird things started happening. The lights in the kitchen next to the room would switch on during the night. Drawers would be left open. The fridge would be wide open. These things seemed weird, but knowing that a lot of people were in the house now, it didn't gain much thought by me nor anyone else. One night, at around 11 or so, my grandmother had become very hysterical. She had woken up all the family members, suddenly asking them if they were just in the room with my dad on the chair next to him while he was sleeping. Turns out, nobody besides her had been awake. My grandfather claimed that she was just being paranoid, but she swears she saw a figure standing there. A couple days later, very late in the night, I had been rudely awakened by a knock on my door. I thought it was my grandmother or mother who needed help with my father, or possibly just my dog wanting in the room. I jumped out of bed and walked quickly to open the door, but nobody was there. I assumed that maybe I imagined or dreamed it. I left the door open so that nobody had to knock and went back to bed. About 20 to 30 minutes later, I heard the noise of footsteps in the hallway and opened my eyes slowly, thinking it was my grandfather going to the bathroom, but to my dismay, it was a figure standing at my doorway. There was no light, but my eyes were adjusted just enough to make out the height, which was about 6 feet tall or so, much taller than everybody in my family besides me. The figure stood there for a moment, but turned around and walked off. I had a very hard time sleeping after that. By around October, my father hated the sight of the hospital bed, as it was uncomfortable, and he believed it was the source of the tormentor. We decided to get him a reclining chair to sleep in instead. When the nurses came back to take the bed back, they were surprised that it was a very old metal bed. They thought they would be taking back a new one. After they took it back, my father no longer had any problems at night, and nobody else saw anything. Unfortunately, my father passed away a month later because of neglect by doctors when they put him back in the hospital. They knew his tubes placed in his throat were causing an infection that added on to his cancer. Now tell me what you think about my experience, because it seems a little too good or bad to be true. It really does make me think sometimes. I can't explain this whole predicament, but I guess it's up to interpretation. I'm still very skeptical about it. Me nor any of my family members were in the right state of mind at the time. I did terrible in school about this time and missed a lot of days. Do you think that stress could have been something to do with it as well? Has anyone else had something like this happen before? A haunting to get off my chest. This happened about 10 years ago, and I've told people about it through the years, but I'm always left with blank stares and people thinking that I'm crazy. I've stopped telling it because of this, but I figured this would be the best place to get it out. Story goes that I was a year out of high school and wasn't working much while commuting to college. I spent a lot of my time with my best friend and her boyfriend at his house. His family had moved south one state due to job reasons, but because of his financial situation, he made more money working less time up there than down here, so he didn't move. This gave us a house to ourselves all around our late teens and early 20s. It lasted about a year or so, because after the majority of the family moved, the payments on the house proved too much for his income, and we all knew it was going to be foreclosed one day. The house was haunted, with the usual hauntings in the beginning. The sound of footsteps on the second floor when no one was there, a rocking chair in the back room that would ever so slightly rock back and forth, a child's toy that kept appearing in different places, even though no one had touched it. Normal haunting stuff. During the winter, there wasn't enough money to pay off the heat, so it was turned off for a couple days. This was when the hauntings went from innocent stuff to a little scarier. My friends would wake up in the night to see someone walking out of their room. The faucets would turn on with them sitting in the other room. Everyone refused to enter the basement at night because it always felt like you were being watched. As spring came, this all started becoming normal to us, and we honestly didn't think much of it. Spring came and went without much happening, but when summer happened, it started getting worse. The power was eventually cut to the house a month or two before it was finally foreclosed, and this is when everything went into overdrive. The first time I ever felt unsafe was when my friends decided to go get food and left me alone to watch the house. We had a battery-operated stereo and candles, and that was about it. I was listening to the radio, but kept getting the feeling that I was being watched, with the dancing shadows from the candles. It eventually freaked me out so much that I put a blanket over my head and huddled with the stereo. The entire time I felt like someone was standing right next to the blanket, so I stayed there, without moving for 15 minutes until they returned. A few nights later was the night that the worst happened. We were only a week or so away from the house being foreclosed, and I got a text to come on over. I walked into the house to find everyone sitting in a circle staring at me. Freaked out, I asked what they were doing, and they all told me to sit down and shut up. Above, I could hear someone walking around, so when I asked who was up there, they all looked at me and said, "No one." I sat down with everyone else, the 7 of us, and listened for what felt like forever. Now mind you, this is August, and the house is being lit by candles. It's hot. I'm sitting on a chair while everyone else is trying to do something when all of a sudden I feel cold, really cold. I start shivering, and I remember one of the girls saying, "Look at her," and everyone turned and stared at me. My body went numb and I just started crying my eyes out. I just couldn't stop crying, and I felt overcome by this extreme feeling of sadness. I couldn't speak, but all I kept thinking about was the name Amy. This went on for maybe 30 seconds, until all of a sudden it got warm in the room again, and I immediately stopped crying. I looked at my friend, who was looking at me like I was crazy, and I just told him, "The girl's name is Amy." He immediately got wide-eyed and asked me why I said that, and I told him that it just kept going through my head again and again. He said he kept having this dream about a little girl in the house whose name was Amy, and that's who he thought was haunting the house. I didn't know this at all. We were all freaked out and decided to get a tape recorder and record EVPs if we could. Someone put the tape recorder at the top of the stairs, and we all sat at the bottom in the living room, talking like normal and asking EVP type questions. We recorded it for about 45 minutes and then played it back. The first 20 minutes were us talking when all of a sudden we hear a girl say something over us talking. It sounds like a girl saying, "Is there a light with a top on it?" following with something unintelligible. Mind you, this is over us talking, so it's not one of us. Later on, you can hear the girl very audibly say, "It's not me that was talking, it's my grandma and my grandpa," followed by a deeper voice saying what sounds like, "Eat the cookie." We all freaked out and didn't catch anything else on the recording. I took the recorder home and recorded it on my computer so that we had it digitally. I still have it, but the annoying thing is that I had to cut the majority of the non-EVP stuff so that people could hear the edit of the video. Everyone says that it's proof that I edited the audio, but it's not. It's simply where I cut out a bunch of worthless audio. In the end, the house was foreclosed, and that was the end of that story. I tell this story all the time, but no one believes the audio and thinks I made the entire thing up, but I didn't. It's frustrating. And I'm hoping that I can get answers from you guys. Horrifying Holiday. This story is 100% true. I'm not simply misinterpreting a bad dream or sleep paralysis as something genuine. These things happened to me and have left me traumatized. Warning: the following content is an account of true events and isn't suitable for children. Throughout my life, I've had many experiences with the paranormal. However, none of them have affected me as much as this encounter. It was 2011, and the British summer had seriously declined even though it was August. So as a last resort, I decided to book a holiday to Skelmersdale to get some sun. The horror really started on the flight. I received my in-flight meal only to discover that the P spelled out the words, "Get out." Upon landing in Skems, I collected my baggage and caught the bus to my B&B. When I opened my luggage to unpack, I found that my clothes had been displaced and wasn't in the same state as they were before departure. Obviously, there wasn't anyone in the cargo hold, so I don't see how this could have happened. I brushed it off and assumed that I must have inadvertently done it while I was packing. On the first night, I returned to my room after a meal at a fast food establishment. I didn't feel like a proper dining experience as I was still jet lagged. I got in bed and fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up at 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. I entered the bathroom, and to my horror, the walls were dripping with blood. Then behind me, I heard someone say, "Oh, come here, you." I locked myself in the room and was too afraid to go into the main room. Luckily, I kept my Slazenger tennis racket in the bathroom. I carry it with me whenever I go out for protection. I emerged from the bathroom with my tennis racket at the ready, only to find the room empty. It was 3:17 a.m., and I was too scared to sleep, so I roamed the hallway for the next 2 hours, knocking on people's doors and waking them up to start conversations with them. On day 2, I paid a visit to the Skelmersdale Chess Club. Whilst engaged in a game, I looked out of the large window to see a man standing there looking in. I screamed and ran out of the building. I come to the conclusion that something had attached itself to me on the flight. Not even my Jesus collage I'm a devout Christian that I carry around with me could deter it. I booked a flight for the next day. I was so glad to be back at home. Occasionally, I'd still hear the same ooh ring out in the desolate streets on those windy nights. I'll never return to Skelmersdale. It truly was a horrifying holiday. The story is 100% true. I'm not simply misinterpreting a bad dream or sleep paralysis as something genuine. These things happened to me and have left me traumatized. The town we moved to. Someone suggested I share my experiences here, so I'm going to try. It may sound weird, and maybe you won't believe it. I honestly question it, sometimes, even though I know something strange happened. I'm going to focus on my experience in a town called Hermiston, Oregon. We, my family and I, had previous experiences, but I'm going to focus on what happened in that town, as it makes up the majority of my experiences. It includes UFO and, I suppose, ghostly activity. We moved to Hermiston after my great-grandfather died, and someone had to take care of the house. We knew nothing about him really. His last name was Franklin. I was young and didn't recall his first name. He had abandoned my grandmother and her mom when she was a baby, so he wasn't someone we knew even until he died, and my grandmother was his last of kin, inherited the property. She lived in Alaska and wanted nothing to do with the house. I overheard my parents and older siblings saying that he was beaten to death and left for dead in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room. I tried to verify this as an adult by looking up news articles, but Franklin is a common last name, and I know very little else but the address. Anyways, bums had been living in the empty house, and someone had to take care of the property. I cried as we left Washington, with its trees, for a Hodung desert town in Oregon. It was a 2-bedroom house built in 1919, if I recall the year correctly. So I shared a bedroom, Grandpa's room, with my 3 siblings. It was quiet for 2 days. My brothers, my mom, and I came down first. My sister and my dad followed 2 days later with the rest of our stuff. The night my sister got there, she was the first to see anything. She woke us up and said she saw a man standing in the closet. Sounds like your typical ghost story, right? That night, myself and my 3 older siblings saw a UFO land across the street in the parking lot of the Catholic church. We sat on the bed watching out the window, and my memory is all kinds of fucked up here. Next, I remember it was only us 2 younger kids watching. It was the length of a school bus, maybe longer, but not much. It had white and amber lights around it, and a bright light underneath, and I don't remember any landing gear. It looked like it was floating, but it was very dark, so no guarantees. I remember seeing dark shapes standing outside, and I could hear them talking, but it wasn't a language I recognized. And that is the last thing I remember from that night. We found out one of our cats dead outside, its neck broken and bleeding from the head against the curb across the street. Next day, we had to get to work. It was the beginning of August. The grass was dry. It was well over 100 degrees, and my dad was in back trying to get the swamp cooler fixed. Mom was using the table saw to board up the back door where somebody broke the latch. My sister yelled fire. My dad had the hose, and our neighbors had turned theirs on, watering the lawns. The fire went fast up the juniper bushes and up the side of the house. The bedroom was gone, and the attic. We had built the house and insulated it with newspaper. The rest of the house was safe, for now. We got a small trailer while we remodeled, and my parents and us kids took turns sleeping inside in the winter and outside in the summer. We couldn't tear down the house since it was zoned for multiple dwelling, and would have had to build a duplex or apartments, so we did it a little at a time. Later, a hailstorm when we were fixing the roof would collapse the ceiling as well. His stuff was still there, and we only kept a few items of furniture and threw out the rest. There was a green fake velvet rocking chair that rocked on its own. We thought it might be the cat's, but even when we watched, it would rock on its own. My mother turned it over to see if she could find out what was going on. Stuffed under the seat was over $12,000 in cash. After we found it, the chair stopped rocking. We found another $12,000 and change inside a wall we were demolishing after the fire. We didn't keep the money and instead sent it to my grandma, who deserved it after being abandoned by the jerk. We all continued to see shadows and apparitions the entire time we lived there, though never the man we saw in the closet again. After we gave Grandma the money, I started experiencing sleep paralysis and horrible nightmares, waking up outside, even when the doors were locked and not knowing how I got there. My sister-in-law woke up with someone lying beside her in bed who wasn't my brother. It's very hard to describe that happened. It was like a nightmare. For some reason, the bathroom and laundry room terrified me and my brother. I would pee as fast as I could and pray or sing songs to myself until I could get out of there. I can't tell you why that room. It was probably the only room I never saw something weird in, but it was consuming terror going near that part of the house. We had tragedy after tragedy in that house, and after many years of living there, I couldn't wait to leave. I moved out at 16 and married at 17. I couldn't go back, but I continued to have weird experiences and births, shadow beings, and the like. I want to say that this next part is not the same feeling as in the other house. Here, I was not afraid. One day I woke up to pee in the middle of the night, and as I was walking down the hall, I saw myself. Standing in the living room, I looked at myself, or what looked like me, and then it turned and I got the feeling I was supposed to follow it. It walked towards the couch where I had been sleeping, then through it, and then through the wall. This is the first time I saw this thing, and the only time it looked like me. I'm not positive that it was the same thing later, except even though it looked different, it felt the same. The next time I saw it, it was a dark shadow taller than average, apparently male, with no facial features. It just stood across the room from me. I felt no fear, only curiosity and the like. I had to go towards it to know what it was. It felt like it wanted something, but when I got close, it was gone. This happened several times, same being without fear then gone. It didn't happen all the time, and I even had a couple quiet years. Then we decided to move again. We drove by my old house and the duplex next door was for rent. I had to live there. I don't know why. It was too much money and I tried so hard to get away. I don't know why I moved back. But initially I was quiet until my parents sold the old house and the firemen used it as a training exercise. And I stood in my backyard and watched the house burn down one last time. After the old house burned down for good, we started having experiences in the house we lived in next door, pounding on the walls like someone punching it, everyday footsteps up and down the hallway. My husband and I regularly saw someone standing in the hallway. The next time I saw the thing, I could hear it too, but I couldn't understand what was being said. It stood between the living room and the hallway, and it sounded like gibberish. Months later, same thing happens, only this time I hear "run" right in my ear as I'm staring at the thing. It was the first time I was afraid by it, and I ran to check on my son. He was fine, but shit was gonna get weird, and I'm so reluctant to share this. I have a hard time believing or understanding it myself. I was reading fanfiction on my laptop. I heard words spoken in my ear. I remember seeing the thing and hearing the first sentence before I lost time I came to. I'm not sure how long I lost, but when I was aware again, the fingers were on the keyboard and a word program was open. I typed something I don't remember typing. I talked to a psychic and shared with a couple friends, but my friends complimented it like I wrote it myself, and I wanted answers. I was scared and confused. The psychic said some stuff I barely understood the meaning of. I'll share what I know I typed with my fingers, but don't remember doing so. The words are written across my mind like ink on parchment, but the paper is crumbling. The ink is running and the words are fading even now. The prophets wrote the words on cave walls and animal hide on the pulp of trees and cocktail napkins. Hear this and listen. Your disciples have gone astray, your God has left, and no longer speaks to us. Left when the silence started speaking also. There is, in the darkness beckoning, the sun the stars cannot bear to see, and so they turn their backs to us. Such a horrible thing to look upon. You will sit there in the darkness, huddled together, your breath shallow faint wisp of steam past your lips, and try not to be heard. your heartbeats synchronized, beating a tattoo across your chest. Who will write the stories now? The prophets are withered with no defined inspiration to guide their pens. No, we will become the authors of our own stories, scattering letters across pages in a desperate attempt to see what happens next. The pages, the chapters littered across the floor, who will read them? Who is there to remember old songs or storytellers now? That we must write ourselves into the plot. The silent whispers, but do not listen. Do not stand too near to edge of understanding. It will whisper. And you may want to skip the end of your book, but go not near it. Close your ears, close your eyes to it, and continue on in blindness, with dead ears and mute tongues, too afraid to speak. The piercing silence, or until you reach your final chapter, and the papers and your book finally scatters to the wind, joining in the whispering, until our Father returns for us. Listen and hear these words, if only these. We are the authors of our own destiny. We are the gods of a new generation. Speak clear and be heard now. Do not fear to break the silence, for we are listening. I have no insight into it, and I stopped trying to pick apart or ask others and never finding an answer. That was the last time I saw that being. We continued having the pounding on the walls and the being that walked the hallway. We had to turn off the Xbox Connect because it kept detecting something in the room, and it got annoying to try to use the system with the Connect always turning on. Our last summer, there we saw 3 UFOs in about a month's time, and I felt like I was going crazy. I told my husband I was moving with or without him, that I could not live there anymore, and within 2 weeks we left town. It's been 2 years, and I haven't had a single experience since leaving. My life is so much better. We're all so much happier, like a weight has been lifted. Health problems I've had for years are gone, and the obvious mental health benefits. I still have family and friends there, but the thought of going back even to visit is something I won't be ready for a while. This is greatly summarized and leaved out some stuff, but the post is long enough. I welcome any feedback or questions, and if anyone has any thoughts on what I wrote when I lost time, it's very disconcerting. To know you wrote something you have no connections to the words themselves or memory of it. I want to understand that. I can pass some other things off as sleep paralysis or try to explain it away, but I was left with some tangible thing that I don't understand, and I can't decide if it sounds sinister or positive or both. Maybe it was sleepwalking, sleep writing? Maybe it did come from me, but I don't remember it. Except for, I know I heard the part of the first line before I lost consciousness or lost time. I have no idea. On the other hand, I don't want to invite this kind of thing to happen again now that I finally found some peace.